Hello, friends. Today we will plunge into the exciting world of Stoicism and consider 6 powerful keys that will help you skillfully manage your inner world and emerge victorious from any life situations. We explore how the Stoics worked with desires and fears, distinguished between things they could and could not control, and how constant self-improvement becomes an integral part of this philosophy. Get ready for an inspiring journey into the world of resilience and wisdom. Let's get started. Distinguish between things that you can and cannot control. Stoicism has many teachings, but this principle is especially important, as it is aimed at realizing our strength and helplessness in various situations. The basic idea is not to waste energy on futile attempts to change something that lies beyond our influence, and focus on what we can really change. Interesting fact: Stoics often use the analogy of a bow and arrow. The bow is something that is in our control, and the arrow is something that does not depend on us. We can strain the bow, shoot an arrow, but we cannot accurately predict where it will fly due to factors that we do not influence. The application of this principle in everyday life can look like this. When we face difficulties, we can ask ourselves if we can change something in the current situation. If so, we can focus our efforts on that. If not, then it's worth freeing yourself from useless anxiety and accepting the inevitable. The distinction between what we can and cannot control plays a key role in Stoicism. This philosophy teaches us to focus on what depends on us and accept the inevitability of what we cannot change. When we realize that we cannot control certain aspects of our lives, it frees us from excessive stress. We stop wasting energy on things that are beyond our control and instead focus on what really affects our well-being. This allows us to be more tolerant in our relationships with others, realizing that everyone has their own freedoms and limitations. The absence of attempts to change what we cannot contributes to the creation of healthier and more sustainable relationships. Distinguishing between the controlled and the uncontrolled also contributes to more effective decision-making. When we clearly see what is amenable to our influence, we can more easily determine how to use our resources in the best possible way. This helps us make more informed decisions. Ultimately, the Stoic principle of distinguishing between the controlled and the uncontrolled contributes to our personal growth. We are becoming more flexible, adaptive, and able to cope effectively with change, which is important for our overall well-being. The practice of detachment from emotions. The second key of Stoicism, the practice of detachment from emotions, provides us with wisdom in dealing with our feelings. But how can you break away from emotions, and what are the historical roots of this idea? The ancient Stoics taught us not so much to suppress emotions as to maintain inner peace in all circumstances. And one of the ways to achieve this harmony is to break away from emotions. It is important to understand that this does not mean denying emotions, but on the contrary, consciously perceiving them, without giving them full control over our decisions and behavior. The historical context of this practice can be seen in the philosophy of Stoicism in ancient Rome. Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, one of the famous Stoics, wrote in his Reflections about the importance of maintaining clarity of mind in the most difficult moments. He argued that we cannot control external events, but we can control our reactions to them. An interesting fact: Stoics were attracted to the ideas of vigilance in relation to their emotions through the practice of projection into the future. They imagined how they would see the current situation in a few days, weeks, or months. This helped them to move away from the moment and see it in a more objective light. This concept is still relevant today, especially in the context of meditation and mental health practices. Detachment from emotions does not mean sensual apathy, but provides us with the opportunity to respond to events with respect for our emotions, but without immersing ourselves in them so much that they subordinate our thinking and decision-making. When we talk about the practice of detachment from emotions, Stoicism offers something more than just holding back or ignoring feelings. It is an invitation to mindfulness and the ability to react to events in accordance with our values, without letting emotions overshadow the clarity of the mind. Let's imagine a situation where something goes wrong in our lives, causing strong emotions. According to the Stoic principle, we could look at ourselves from afar, as if we were watching from the sidelines. This creates a kind of psychological separation, allowing us to see the event more objectively. An interesting fact: the ancient Stoics had the concept of prosecticism, prosok, which can be translated as vigilance. This idea was to be attentive to your emotions, the moment, and your reactions to what was happening. The application of this vigilance helped the Stoics maintain inner harmony in difficult circumstances. Emotional alertness and detachment from emotions help to create a kind of emotional filter that allows us to react with rational thinking, rather than giving in to panic or excessive emotional reaction. This approach to emotions promotes a balance between passion and reason, which ultimately makes it easier to make decisions based on focus and values rather than fleeting emotional impulses. Apply the concept of epoch. When we talk about the application of the concept of epoch in the context of Stoicism, we are talking about a specific method of managing one's reactions to events. This concept can be especially useful in situations where we face difficulties or stress. The epoch in the Stoic sense means a temporary prism through which we look at the events taking place. The idea is that we suspend our emotional response to the current situation, separating ourselves from it for a while. Imagine that you had a difficult day at work or in your personal life. Instead of reacting emotionally immediately, Stoics suggest creating a temporary setback and looking at the situation more broadly. This may include asking yourself questions like, will it matter in a week, a month, or a year? How does this situation relate to my long-term goals and values? An interesting fact: the epoch was also associated with the idea of apathy in Stoicism, which does not mean the absence of emotions, but the preservation of the balance of the mind regardless of events. This helps to avoid excessive joy in periods of success and excessive bitterness in moments of failure. The use of epoch does not deprive us of the sensory perception of the world, but on the contrary, gives it meaningfulness and purposefulness. This is not a denial of feelings, but their conscious management and interpretation through the prism of a broader time horizon. As a result, we can react more calmly and intelligently to events, which is the basis of fortitude and inner peace in Stoic philosophy. The use of the concept of epoch in Stoicism is a tool for managing one's inner world in response to external events. This concept implies a temporal prism through which we perceive the events taking place. Separating from current emotions, we suspend our emotional response and look at the situation more broadly. Epoch offers the opportunity to create a temporary indentation before reacting emotionally. At this point, we can consider the events from a more objective perspective. Stressful situations do not cause instant reactions, but give time for reflection and making informed decisions. It is noteworthy that the epoch does not deprive us of an emotional perception of the world, but on the contrary, gives it meaningfulness and purposefulness. This is not an attempt to suppress feelings, but rather to manage them from a broader time horizon. This approach to the perception of time and events contributes to a more calm and reasonable reaction to what is happening, which serves as the basis for perseverance and inner peace in Stoic philosophy. Develop your ability to willpower. It is not just willpower as a physical exercise, but rather moral strength in the context of decision-making and overcoming difficulties. The Stoics teach us that we can form and strengthen our willpower just as we train our body. This carries the idea that we can train our minds to be resilient, resistant to the influence of external factors, and to preserve our values in all circumstances. One of the key aspects of developing willpower in Stoicism is recognizing the difference between things that are within our control and those that are beyond. We can control our decisions, actions, and reactions, but not always the events around us. Thus, willpower lies in our ability to choose how we respond to external factors. By developing willpower, we train ourselves to make decisions based on our values, even when faced with difficulties, or temptations. This includes giving up negative habits, overcoming laziness, and being able to follow your goals despite temporary difficulties. Interesting fact: Seneca, one of the famous Stoics, argued that willpower is like a muscle that we can train and strengthen. He advised his students to practice temporary abstinence from satisfying their desires in order to strengthen their control over their minds. Thus, the development of willpower in Stoicism becomes a way to strengthen inner stability and the ability to make informed, ethical decisions in difficult situations. The ability to willpower in Stoicism is also associated with the concept of austerity, a kind of training of the mind and soul. An important aspect of this practice is awareness and control over one's desires, appetites, and passions. No frills. The Stoics taught that willpower manifests itself in the ability to give up excessive pleasures and excesses. Willpower training may involve temporarily giving up comfort or excessive pleasures in order to instill the habit of controlling your desires, overcoming the fear of difficulties. Fortitude in Stoicism also implies overcoming the fear of difficulties and fighting laziness. It requires efforts to develop the willpower to keep moving forward, even when faced with difficulties. The practice of asceticism. Some Stoics practiced asceticism to strengthen their willpower. This included giving up luxury, minimalism in material goods, and other forms of self-restraint to achieve inner harmony. The ability to make decisions. The development of willpower is also associated with the ability to make informed decisions and follow them. The Stoics taught that we cannot control all aspects of our lives, but we can always control our decisions and actions. Managing internal dialogue. The ability to willpower also includes the ability to manage internal dialogue and self-improvement. Stoics practiced constant observation of their thoughts, correction of negative beliefs, and the development of a more constructive internal dialogue. Willpower in Stoicism thus becomes a tool for achieving inner freedom and stability in the face of external difficulties. It helps to build character, strengthen inner resilience, and reach agreement with oneself in various situations. Constantly improving yourself. This concept includes a continuous process of self-creation and improvement as a person. In Stoic philosophy, constant self-improvement is usually associated with the following ideas. Self-knowledge. Knowing yourself and your goals is the starting point for continuous improvement. Stoics call for a constant reflexive analysis of their actions, thoughts, and emotions for a better understanding of themselves. The development of virtues. Stoicism emphasizes the development of virtues such as wisdom, justice, restraint, and bravery. These qualities are considered the foundation of a noble life. Accepting trouble. Stoics teach us to accept difficulties and failures as opportunities for growth and improvement. Instead of denying or avoiding difficult situations, Stoics suggest seeing them as a chance for personal development. Learning the ability to accept feedback. Stoicism encourages the pursuit of self-improvement through the acceptance of feedback. The ability to self-criticize and the willingness to learn from your mistakes are considered important aspects of continuous improvement. Setting and achieving goals. Stoics teach the creation of clear goals and the constant pursuit of their achievement. This includes the ability to manage your time and energy by focusing on priorities. Interesting fact: Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic, highly valued research and teaching. In his reflections, he emphasizes that we can always find new lessons in the experience of others and in our own mistakes. Thus, the constant improvement of oneself in Stoicism becomes a philosophy of life aimed at ethical improvement and the development of human potential. Working with desires and fears. Dealing with desires and fears is a key aspect of Stoicism, aimed at developing control over one's own drives and emotions. Let's take a look at some interesting aspects of this concept. Overcoming excesses. Stoics call for a conscious and reasonable attitude towards their desires. Instead of succumbing to excesses, they advise evaluating their desires and choosing only those that correspond to internal values and do not violate moral norms. Thus, working with desires in Stoicism is associated with the understanding that true well-being does not depend on the possession of material things or external successes. Accepting the inevitable. Stoics teach acceptance of inevitable events and difficulties, which helps to overcome fears. They call for preventing fears and anxieties from controlling our inner world. By accepting the inevitability of certain events, we free ourselves from unnecessary fear and become more resistant to change. Control over reactions. Stoics claim that we cannot always control external circumstances, but we can always control our reactions. Working with desires and fears involves developing the ability to maintain inner peace and resilience in the face of life's challenges. This requires awareness and the ability to regulate your emotions. Instilling calmness. The goal of the Stoics is to achieve inner peace regardless of external circumstances. Working with desires and fears involves the conscious formation of habits aimed at strengthening inner stability. This means active participation in the process of managing your inner world and gradually reducing dependence on external factors. The ethical aspect. Fortitude in Stoicism is associated not only with managing emotions, but also with observing ethical principles. Dealing with desires and fears requires not only self-control, but also constant attention to the question of whether our actions and desires correspond to our ethical beliefs. Interesting fact: Epictetus, one of the Stoic philosophers, said, "It's not those things that confuse people, but judgments about those things." This highlights the importance of our internal reactions and judgments in dealing with desires and fears.